Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Bob Kelly. I'm on the Historic Advisory Committee for the Town of Victor, and we sponsor these talks, and we are sort of help out with the town historian, Babette Huber, who's sitting in the back. But thank you all for being here. And thank you very much to Munir for agreeing to talk today. I've known Munir for a long time now. Munir is the founder and longtime owner of the apple farm. And I got to know him because he was very generous with Serenity House and allowing Serenity House to have their garage sale in his front yard. And Munir would spend hours and hours helping us put it together, store junk up in his barns, and then bring it down for the garage sale. And we're very thankful for all the work that he did with that. So today we're here to hear the story of the immigration of his family. It's an interesting story, and we're very happy to have you here, Munir, and talking about it.
Thank you, Bob. I was surprised when Bob asked me because he must have decided that I meet the minimum requirement to speak. We talked a lot in person. We used to get together for breakfast and things like that. But the story of my journey is kind of unique. I was born in Tiberias on the Lake of Galilee. And that city, but that's an older picture. That must be from the 1920s. I was born in 39, so. And across the lake there, we used to have a farm. But we lived in both places, because of the school. We don't have a school at the farm. And in Palestine at that time, we were really outsiders because they always, the family start way in Iran. At that time it was called Persia. And in 1844, a movement started there. The same thing here. In 1844, there was all this religious thing all over, expecting the return of Christ, and all these farmers in this area were selling their farms and giving to the poor because when Christ comes, they're going to be lifted up in the air. At the same time, there was a young man in 1844 declared that he was a messenger from God. And his purpose was to prepare the way for someone who's greater than him. And so my connection goes back to that time where my a great-grandfather became a follower of that movement. And later on, I don't know, they were exiled from there because the Babi movement there, it was very popular. Many people became Babis, and they were, really hard on them. They killed over 20,000 people, and the Bab himself was executed by a firing squad. One of his followers was a nobleman whose father was a minister at the court of the Shah. And when he died, and his son became followers of the Bab, and he gave away most of his property to the poor. You know, he was really championed the poor people. And he became a follower of the Bab, but they couldn't kill him because he had a big family, actually. And so they have to exile. They put him at first in a dungeon in Tehran, underground dungeon, with heavy chains around his neck and everything else. And then finally they decided to exile him with many of his followers and family members. Now, my great-grandfather wasn't with these people that was exiled from that point. They were exiled, yeah, that is the nobleman, yeah. Mirza Buzurg. Actually, what Mirza is a title. It's like Lord. Buzurg means big. Nuri means from the Nur is one of the provinces in Iran, Nuri. And so Nabil is here, try to correct me. And they were in Baghdad there for 10 years. And his firm, okay, that's my great-grandfather. And that son he's carrying was grandfather on the mother's side. And that's an old guy there.
That's him when he was older.
Yeah, it's older. And
This is.
yeah, that's one of the lobbies there. That's the way they used to handle him. And so they were in Baghdad for 10 years. Then Baha'u'llah's fame became great. People were coming on foot from India, from all over to see him. And the Persian government was very upset. So they pressured the Ottoman Empire to move him away from Persia. So they sent him to Constantinople. And there in 4 months, people were coming to see him, and they figured, well, Constantinople is a crossroad. People from all over stop there. So they have to send him somewhere more remote. So they took him to Adrianople, which is the farthest point in the Ottoman Empire. He was there for 5 years. And then the same thing happened. His fame spread all over, so they decided, well, we gotta really put an end to that. So they sent him to the prison city of Akka. Now Akka was a very, very ancient city. I mean, it's mentioned in the Old Testament. In the Bible, in the map, you see it's mentioned as Akko or Akkor. And they were put there in prison. And we've been 2 years in that, we went to see that room there. And under severe conditions, you know. And Akka was at that time known, they had all kind of diseases like dysentery, you just name it. They had bad water and everything else. And they said that if people used to say, if the bird flies over Akka, he will drop dead. That's how bad the air was. And many of them, most of them survived there. But the orders from the Ottoman, leader was that to beat them under really strict conditions. But and they were told that they are enemies of Islam. So when they landed there, people were throwing stuff on him, spitting on him, and everything else, all the way as they walked toward that prison. With time, within a couple of years, people start changing. You figure, oh, they love these people. They don't seem to be nice people. Why? And even the mayor of the city, he was disobeying the Sultan's order and giving him freedom to go out, out of this prison and everything else. After a little bit over 2 years in the prison, under very strict confinement. They were allowed to live in the city itself, but they couldn't leave out of the city. And then a few years after that, they were allowed to leave and live in the vicinity. And that's where Baha'u'llah died. Anyway, that's talking too much about that. So my grandfather was one of these people. And when Baha'u'llah passed away in 1992, his son,
1892.
1892, he appointed his son, his eldest son, to be his interpreter and successor. And, this is a picture of the farm we had on the east side of the Lake of Galilee. And that was taken, I think, what, 1820?
No, that was the 1940s. That was from Kublat Sangab Snapbats.
I was young then. Anyway, so Israel became the Baha'i headquarters, national headquarters, and I mean international headquarters. That's why Baha'is from all over the world, they go there for pilgrimage. And we went, me and Joe and Nabil and Cheryl and my other son, we went there in 2022 in October 4th. A year later, that's where all the trouble started, you know. And so I think I'm going to look a little bit here, so what's...
Good idea.
And then there comes the shock. One night in 1948, we got this big bang on the door. And with the door, you have 20 minutes to leave here. In the middle of the night, at 2 o'clock in the morning. We had 20 minutes. It was my mother with 5 kids. My father at that point, we didn't know what happened to him. He was kidnapped. We later on found he was kidnapped. And so my mother with 5 kids, my 2 uncles with their kids were taken with the boat and they threw us on the other side of the lake. And over there, we didn't know what to do. We had nothing. Actually, I was 3 days with my pajamas. Just imagine. And all what I remember about that is the bang on the door and walking in the night behind somebody. I don't know, I could remember who it was, but person, all what I could see, you know. And from there, we didn't know what to do, so we called the head of the Baha'i faith in Haifa. And he told us to go to Akka, and we had a Baha'i property there. We lived there for 2 years. And then from there, we moved to Nazareth. Now in Nazareth, it's a beautiful town, physically, but beautiful because of the people. There were beautiful people that, and at that time, many of them were refugees. During the 48 wars, there was many of these cities were ethnically cleansed. Like Tiberias, no Arab lived there. They kicked everybody out. The city of Safa, north of there, nobody lived there. Nazareth was supposed to be ethnically cleansed. But the general that was in charge wouldn't do it. And he was a Canadian. So that's why how Nazareth was saved, you know. And people there, Christian, Muslim, Copt, Druze, I mean, we got together so well. I mean, I felt I would have been happy to live there the rest of my life, you know. Except something nice happened. We could not go back to our farm when they took it.
You want to just, there's a lot of pictures. If you could just say like 2 words about each slide, because I'm way behind.
Just keep going, don't matter.
It's okay. This is not his plan. It's okay. He's doing it.
Okay, this is a picture of Tiberias toward the east, looking east. That's, I remember it when I left there, when I was 9 years old. And of course, that's the lake there. It's a very small lake, but in the Bible it's referred to as the Sea of Galilee. You know, and something nice happened. We could not go back to the farm, except my father was very good friend with somebody at the kibbutz next to us, his name is Teddy Kolek. And he was a Jew that came there from Austria. And he was the same age as my father. And they became buddies, good friends. And so he, after the war in 48, all of a sudden, he was way up there. He was one of the advisors of Ben-Gurion. And you can hear about him now in the news, many times they mention his name. And later on, he was for about 6-7 years the mayor of Jerusalem. And he helped a lot by making the government exchange that property. Oh, see that picture? Okay, Tiberias, where I was born, is 686 feet below sea level. And just think, we are 570 feet above sea level. You know, so when I came here, I have to use oxygen. So that's my son there. On the left there, you can see that little green there, it's sea level. And you're looking down at the lake. It's, imagine being 686 below sea level. That's Tiberias looking at it from the east. Uh-oh. That's me and my brother, younger brother, Nabil's father. That's the elementary school in Tiberias, I guess. And people still use donkeys. That people come from the villages to there, you know, that's the only transportation they had. And what you see, those mountains there, that's what they call the Golan Heights. And that's one of the first buildings that was built in the kibbutz next to us. And when they moved there, actually we were so happy because we had neighbors. And we became good friends and everything else, but then things changed. And that is when we exchanged our property with property around the Bahai shrines, they will not exchange the cemetery. We had a private cemetery. So they were able to move that cemetery with all the family members into a place over higher, you know, in the mountain there. So that's my great-grandfather, my grandfather, and everybody else. Rest in peace there.
And that's the brochure from Kibbutz Ein Gedi.
Yeah. That's my grandfather. That's my mother there. Anyway, talk too much about that, but in Israel, I could not go to college. First, I wasn't that smart. You have to be an A student, I mean literally. And if you are not Jewish, they will only accept 3% of all the minorities. So you can see it was hopeless. So my father wanted me to go to college. So he was able to send me to the United States with the help of some Baha'is. Uh,
This is where your mom went to school to become a nurse?
Oh, that's not, well, he wanted me to say that my mother was a nurse.
Well, we,
Don't worry.
okay.
Okay. That's okay, you don't have to follow that. And my father, he went to college, 2-year college, in Suffolk, which was a city north of Tiberias. And he was very fluent in English, Arabic, Persian, French. And for a while, he worked as a translator for the British Air Force. You know, they used to fly him all over to translate from Arabic to English, from English to Arabic, English to French. And then after that, after the war, you know, as Baha'is, we cannot go into politics. You know, we can't go into partisan politics. In the purest form that's concerned for the society, yes, but not in partisan politics. And so we had a little piece of land, we did farm, and then for 7 years, he helped the head of the Bahai faith when they were constructing the shrines. Okay. And that's one of the people that helped me. You know,
You actually
Lauren
spoke
House,
English.
huh?
He was one of the people you spoke English with a lot.
Hmm?
You spoke English a lot. with-
Yeah, well, I was exposed with many Baha'is that came to America, and English Baha'is that spoke English, you know, in the Holy Land, and I was exposed to them, so I was able to practice a little English. But at the same time, my English was such that I didn't really think in English. I used to think in Arabic or Hebrew and translate in my mind, you know, and that's, so when I came here, people asked me, do you hand me a cigarette, you like to smoke? I say, thank you, I don't drink. Because the word in Arabic is, يشرب دخان, I don't know. And it took a while that I start speaking in English, you know, that's a part of the thing. Anyway, I'm not following what he's telling me there, but, so I came, I left there in April 29, 1963. I went to London for 3 weeks, and then I came to the United States. With, that's a party that was held behind our house in Nazareth, which it wasn't our house, we rented that. You know, after the war, we didn't own a house. We were kind of displaced refugees, you know. And that was a party that was taken after when my 2 uncles left Israel to go to Jordan. So I come to the United States. I spent 3 weeks in Connecticut with an American couple. Oh, he's trying to show me that. In Nazareth, I went to a school, American Baptist School. When we went there, 2022, we took a picture in front of it. And okay. These are some of the friends when we went there. You know, after I left in 63, I didn't go back for 41 years. So I go there, and I know where some of friends live. So I walked knocked at the door, and this guy comes up, hey, come on. And as if we were, we were never in contact even. And there were about 6 of us. And that was in 2007. You have to have dinner. We had dinner. And we want to go out to go to dinner. No, he's staying here. And they actually left the whole flat, and he moved up with his kids, one of his kids. And we were in there, the whole flat. And these people, you haven't seen in 41 years. It is very lovely, lovely, lovely people. And when the family lived there, I gave most of the furniture. And they showed us that thing that they got, my mother gave it to them, and they treasure it. They always think, oh, that's from, Anyway, I don't know when we want to put these, but I don't like to go to. Anyway, I come to this country. I spend 3 weeks in Connecticut, and then I went to a Bahai school in Elliott, Maine, Green Acre Bahai School. And I spent there 3 months. And I met so many young kids, spoke lots of English there, they all speak English. And from there, I left September 1963, and I went to Illinois, and I went down to Urbana, Illinois, to the college,
Champaign-Urbana.
in Urbana, the University of Illinois. I was there for 2 years, and then I was in electrical engineering, and then I lost my mind. And I decided to switch to horticulture. So I left there and I went to Utah State University in Logan, Utah. And if you see it, it's in the foot of the mountain. I think it's a mile above sea level. It's a beautiful place. And of course, after I got to this country, about 6 months later, 9 months, 8 months later, my father died. And I was paying my tuition and everything else, and so it became very hard. So the dean at the university, they allowed me, give me a permit to work. So I worked at the physical lab there for a while. And in the summertime, I went to Chicago and I applied for a job at the railroads, Illinois Central Railroad. And they hired me as a switchman. And I worked in the yard there, Hawthorne Yard. I was in passenger trains, just throwing switches. And I was able to earn enough money. And in between the free time, I used to paint houses. To live on it for the rest of the year. This is impossible. Remember, tuition was $200, Now it's thousands and thousands of dollars. And then, after I finished school, I moved to Canada. Because my family by then, in 1966, they moved to Canada in Oakville, Ontario. So I had nowhere to go, even though my intentions was going back to Israel, but then to who? All my family is there, so I went to Canada. Now, I did not have any culture shock anyway, because I was exposed to many, people from the West and everything else. Many people came and stayed with us. And so when I got to Canada, I tried to get a job there at the university, and of course it takes time. And So I applied for Ford, and I worked at Ford Motor Company in Oakville. I worked there for about a year and a half. And then meanwhile, I came down to the States because my brother and right, he met a young lady there, and they fell in love, and they decided, and that young lady was Joe Richter's sister. So we came down, we were there, and I was talking with Bill and Marge, beautiful, beautiful people, wonderful human beings. And we were talking, and I was talking about my field and all this, and they have all that big farm, and they didn't know what to do with it. And actually, I wrote a paper when I was at college about starting something like that, with how everything, what happens in a few years and things like that. And they looked at it and they said, well, how about if we start that here? So we started the partnership. And my other brother came down from Canada, which I couldn't do it alone. So we planted about 30,000 trees of dwarf apple trees. Now, people were very kind of skeptical because we have them on wire, just espalier, like a post and wire. And they thought they're crazy, they don't know what they're doing. And actually, many farmers in this area were resistant to planting dwarf trees. My father planted these trees, that's the way I go. And 5 years afterward, Dick Norton, who was the extension servant in Monroe County, he started bringing tours, bring all these growers on tours to show them the kind of crop you get and all this. And now, everything is dwarf trees. Not only dwarf the way we plant, even dwarf are there. So it is funny. And it is funny that the book that I studied in school, he talks about that it is not practical, the dwarf. And he says all these negative things about it. And in 1980, Dick Norton wrote the author of that book. I don't remember his name. I remembered it, but I don't remember it now. When you get my age, even though I have a good memory, but it is short. He brought him over to see that, and he actually changed that. So at that point, it was the largest dwarf apple tree farm in the east of the United States, the largest. And that's a picture of the family there, and one grandkid and one great-grandkid. And they're all now taller, most of them taller than me. So what else? Anyway.
The video, and also I was just gonna go back really quick. She was the one
That's the lady that I stayed with in Connecticut for 2 weeks. She's very famous. She was instrumental in creating the United Nations. She was involved in it and everything as a Bahai. Yeah. And she's very famous. She was friend with George Bush, Sr., with all these big shots. And she donated that to Nancy Reagan, a whole thing for the White House. Anyway, all these important people, here I am. I'm nothing. I'm just a small human being. But I was so lucky. And all my life, I never seen a person shot, except in movies. I never seen a person bleed. When I was in Chicago there during the summertime, I lived at different houses. There's a story which is funny and crazy. When I first moved to Chicago, I rented a room at the, YMCA. I was there one day and all of a sudden I get a phone call. And he said, "My name is Raoul Hoff, and I would like to come and pick you up. You have to stay with us." I said, "No, thank you, I'm fine. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Thank you, I'm fine." In 20 minutes, he was there. Anyway, I went, they were a couple from Oak Park, New York. And I stayed with them for 3 months. They were both teachers. And then the next summer, when I went there, there's another family in Maywood wanted me to stay with them. So in return, I insisted that I paint their house. And then everybody in the street wanted me to paint their house. I had so many houses that I could. One year, my brother came down and helped me a little bit. But, so I was so lucky, really, in my home. And one year, I stayed with a African-American lady in Chicago, down in the south, but the 28th South Street there. And people at the railroad there, they tell me, "Are you crazy? Are you still alive? How can you go there?" And I didn't have a single incident. Actually, one time I had trouble with the car. I had more help than I needed. Everybody stopped. And I think what it is really your attitude to other people. You are accepted and you look, nobody harms you, even in Chicago. And that's in the middle of the civil rights thing, when you had all this thing. And I never had anybody, for some reason, somehow I was protected. Anyway, I went, where's Nabil? He said there's a little video just you want to show, about 5 minutes, about the apple farm.
Tell us more about
And then anybody that have any questions,
Why don't you keep talking while I figure out what's wrong with the video?
put the
Or
video
ask
on.
the question.
working on it.
I can't.
Huh?
It's not work.
It's
It's
not?
not work.
Uh-oh. Anyway, it shows that what we used to do there and people will come and, anyway, I went behind my time. I see Bob is coming to come kick me out of here. Anyway, if there's any questions, I'd love to answer them.
There's a question.
Before you start
Yeah.
questions, let me just ask if you would use the mic, because people that are tuning in won't be able to hear if we don't have the mic on.
Is this being zoomed?
Question? I think it's working.
Thank you for being here and sharing your story. I wanted to know, when was the apple farm then producing apples enough for people to come and purchase? So when did apple sales begin to the farm?
Oh. Well, when we planted the trees, first trees went in 1971. In 1974, we start picking apples. Not much, half a peck per tree, anything like that. In 74, much more. In 75, we produced more than we could sell. So in 76, we decided to build a store and the packing house in the back. And at the peak time, we were getting over 40,000 bushels. So we have storage for about 40,000 bushels there. And we did lots of cider, lots of donuts. apple donuts. And what happened was, in 1985, Bill and Marge, they decided they want to go pioneering for the Bahai faith. And they went to Antilles,
Netherlands, Antilles.
yeah. And so I ended up by myself because my brother wanted out. He didn't want it to be. So I was the only crazy one to stay. And still I haven't recovered my sanity, I guess.
Other questions?
My husband and I moved to Victor just 4 years ago, and we have enjoyed walking on the trails over on the apple farm and seeing some remnants of different activities, the disc golf, and there's a very interesting, like, kind of archway that has like skeletal figures, and I wondered if you could talk about some of the different activities that took place there? Were they entertainment type?
That was actually Mary Sue's son made that,
That's amazing.
and it was for a haunted hayride.
And you did that for the
That was
season?
2016,
For the season?
for October 2016.
Oh, that's,
You know, the people in Ghana and again, they were using the back of the farm. You know, they would, the Seneca Trail and then the Victor hiking trail, they were using down there. And I always helped in mowing all that area on my farm, keep it clean. And,
Could you talk just a little bit about the naturalization process and what you went through to become a citizen?
about
becoming.
pasteurization,
Naturalization, when you applied for citizenship?
Becoming a citizen, naturally.
Oh. I came down, I don't know what you call it. My wife at that time was American, so when we moved here, they, in 75, I became a citizen and raised 4 kids. And we, at that time, when the rector decided to leave, and I was in by myself, I had a house on Bailey Road in East Bloomfield. And you know what's funny, when I moved there, I built a house and I moved there, people were saying, here goes the town, that was, glad you didn't go down there. And they all became friends, you know, it's funny, yeah. But
Well, first off,
you know, I'm a little hard of hearing, even though I have these things in my ear, but
So my first job was picking up the drop apples at the farm to make cider. But I remember you guys, and my mom was Lucy, who drove the tractor for the tractor rides and took out the fence one time with the bucket. So I have great memories of the apple farm and your family and how kind you were to our family. But can you, the types of apples that you had at the apple farm were not the typical store-bought apples of the time. Can you elaborate why you chose some of the different varieties of apples?
well, most of the variety that we put there was recommended by Cornell University. And we were very close with Cornell, and actually I had many visitors. They used to bring tours there too, from Cornell, busloads of people. And it is funny, there was a tour from Europe. And you know, when they come, we give them a donut and a glass of cider. This is not cider, this is apple juice. You know, in Europe, you know, cider is alcoholic. But it's funny, you know,
Dave had a question.
Dave, yeah.
You said that you were growing more apples than you could sell, but did you sell excess apples to any of the places around here, like Mott's?
Well, eventually you have to do that. You couldn't sell, and that's what happened is the price of apples, like imagine in 77, we were selling apples for juice at 5 cents a pound. In 83, it was 3 cents a pound. And so it doesn't even pay to pick them up. And that's when they were getting all that concentrate from China, and so it is, and then I cut half of the trees off. Anything that would eventually go for juice, I didn't want. And I just concentrated on what I could sell right there. We tried to sell wholesale to different places. We send a truckload. But what was it, about 1,200 boxes to Texas, and we didn't get a penny for them. Because there was a fire, and they lost everything, and what can you do? So I wasn't, very big on really. Wagman at one point was interested, and I had Bob and Danny Wagman came, and their produce manager. They wanted me to only make cider for them. I can't sell it to anybody else and all this. And I said, no. That was way back, about 88.
And the cider was not preservative.
Yeah. And, at one point, you couldn't sell cider just as it comes there. You had to, they passed a law where you have to pasteurize. But we never did pasteurize. We used,
Ultraviolet.
ultraviolet rays. When you pasteurize, you have to heat that stuff to kill everything in it. Which is very, very expensive machine. We paid $12,000 for it. And I hope it is cheaper now.
It's 65,000 for the same one.
Anyway, it goes through that machine, and the ultraviolet rays will kill everything in it. And it will last as long as, pasteurized, but it doesn't change the taste, because it doesn't get heated.
Munir, thank you very much for coming and sharing your.
Now, Bob, aren't you sorry? Aren't you sorry asking me to come?
No, you did a great job. And thanks to all of you for coming. We're going to be taking a break over the winter, and we'll be having some other talks in the spring. But thank you all for coming. If you're not on our mailing list, you haven't signed up, put your email address down, and we will contact you when we have other talks. Munir, thank you very much for sharing your story.
You're welcome, Bob.